They warned you about becoming too ambitious, didn't they? Told you to be kind, be patient, be humble, and everything would fall into place. That if you just stayed good and worked hard, the world would reward you in time. You believed them until life showed you something different. The louder you played fair, the more invisible you became. The more honest you were, the more you were manipulated. You looked around and realized the ones winning weren't necessarily the ones playing by the rules. That's when the discomfort started, because deep down, you've always felt it. That in this world, this chaotic, beautiful, ruthless world, niceness without wisdom is a gamble. That maybe survival and sincerity don't always sleep in the same bed. You started asking questions you were never supposed to ask out loud. Questions that made people shift in their seats. And then you found the prince. Not the fairy tale version, not the distorted caricature of evil, but the real words, subtle, sharp, strangely comforting in their raw honesty. And in Machiavelli's voice, centuries old yet eerily modern, you heard something that sounded less like corruption and more like clarity. Because Machiavelli never told you to be cruel. He told you to understand power. He never said betray everyone. He said, see people clearly. He didn't whisper deceit. He shouted realism. And if you're ready to hear it, not just with your mind, but with your spine, his advice might change the way you walk through the modern world. You live in a time where perception is everything. People don't just want truth, they want spectacle. Influence is currency. Timing is power. Words are weapons. Silence is strategy. And somewhere in that maze, you're supposed to remain authentic, whatever that means. Machiavelli wouldn't tell you to betray your heart. He'd simply ask, does your heart understand the game it's playing? You watched someone less talented get promoted because they knew how to be seen. You've seen a liar rise through a system that rewards charm over substance. You've watched truth get buried under louder narratives. You felt the sting of being right, but too late or too gentle or too silent. And if you're honest, it didn't feel fair. It felt like a joke told in a language you never learned. Machiavelli would look at you, not with sympathy, but with a quiet challenge. Why didn't you learn the language? Because he knew something we often forget. Virtue without strategy is vulnerable. You were raised to think that goodness is enough. But the world doesn't run on ideals. It runs on human behavior, predictable, flawed, emotional, fearful. Machiavelli studied that behavior, not to manipulate it, but to survive it. And he didn't write for tyrants. He wrote for people like you, those forced to navigate systems that are anything but just. In a perfect world, good intentions would win. But Machiavelli never wrote for a perfect world. He wrote for this one. So here's his first piece of advice. Stripped of centuries of distortion, be both a fox and a lion. A lion is strength, courage, defiance. A fox is cunning, observation, strategy. If you're only a lion, you'll walk straight into traps. If you're only a fox, you'll never command respect. But if you are both, you become unshakable, not through cruelty, but through intelligence. Think about how many times you've reacted impulsively. You said too much, trusted too fast, gave too freely. You led with your heart and left your throat exposed. You hoped others would understand your honesty. Instead, they took advantage of it. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to learn from it. You cannot control how the world works, but you can study its rhythms. You can understand that people don't always respond to truth. They respond to timing, delivery, image. And once you stop resenting that reality, you can start using it, not to manipulate, but to protect, to guide, to lead. Because here's what Machiavelli knew that few dare to admit. There's no virtue in being powerless. Let that sink in. If you're kind but constantly crushed, you don't spread kindness. You spread pain. If you're honest but silenced, your truth never reaches the ears that need it. If you want to lead, protect, create, you must first become formidable. And that means understanding power, not fearing it. You don't need to abandon your values. You need to anchor them so deeply that no manipulation can pull them loose. But to do that, you need tools. And Machiavelli hands them to you. Not with guilt, but with precision. He doesn't ask you to become someone else. He asks you to stop pretending the world is kinder than it is. Because pretending gets you hurt, but seeing clearly, that sets you free. Now you begin to see the game. You notice how people respond more to symbols than substance. How confidence, real or performed, drowns out quiet brilliance. How those in power rarely ask, is this fair? And more often ask, is this effective? You start thinking like a strategist. You stop speaking just to feel heard, and start speaking to create movement. You stop performing virtue and start embodying it, quietly, efficiently, without apology. You realize it's not about controlling others. It's about no longer being controlled. Machiavelli's genius wasn't in cruelty, it was in clarity. He knew that behind every moral system lies a power structure. And if you don't understand that structure, you become a pawn in someone else's game. But if you do, you can protect your heart without handing it to the wrong hands. And you've done that enough, haven't you? So this time, you don't fight harder. You think sharper. You don't raise your voice. You lower your posture and choose your words like chess moves. You don't seek revenge. You seek results. You don't react. You respond. This is not manipulation. This is maturity. Because in a world ruled by performance, the quiet strategist holds the real power. And now that might be you. You didn't grow colder. You grew smarter. That's what happens when betrayal doesn't break you. It sharpens you. You stop expecting people to be who they say they are and start watching who they become when the mask slips. You learn not to cling to promises, but to patterns. Not to words, but to actions. And Machiavelli, centuries ago, was whispering in your ear, it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But he never meant to lead with fear. He meant to never mistake being liked for being safe. You tried being the agreeable one, the forgiving one, the one who gives second chances until they turn to 10th. But all it got you was a front row seat to your own dismissal. Because here's the hard truth. People respect boundaries more than kindness. They listen when you stop over-explaining. They take you seriously when you stop needing to be liked. And this is the Machiavellian shift most people miss. He never told you to become ruthless. He told you to stop being naive. Niccolo Machiavelli lived in a time of political assassinations, backroom alliances, and rulers who could be dethroned before sunrise. His world was brutal, and he didn't romanticize it. He studied it. He watched men fall not because they were evil, but because they were unprepared. So when he says, a wise man does at once what a fool does finally, he's not shaming you. He's telling you, timing is survival. You wait too long to say no. You wait too long to end the toxic friendship. You wait too long to leave the job that's draining your soul. Why? Because you confuse indecision with patience. But patience without clarity is just procrastination dressed up in virtue. Machiavelli would ask, why are you delaying the inevitable? That question stinks, because deep down, you already know. You're afraid of being perceived as harsh, as selfish, as cruel. But being strategic isn't cruelty. It's respecting your energy. When you see chaos coming, prepare. When you feel disrespected, act, don't react. When a pattern repeats, don't explain it away. End it. Because Machiavelli knew something modern culture avoids. You can be kind and still carry a sword. The modern world disguises manipulation with smiles. It hides power games under meetings and LinkedIn connections. But power hasn't changed. It just wears better clothes. And you've been dressing yourself in openness, assuming everyone's heart matches yours. They don't. Some people only understand firmness. Some people need silence to hear you. Some only stop when they hit a wall. So be the wall. This is where you stop playing checkers in a world built on chess. You stop expecting your transparency to protect you. You learn to move like water, fluid, but with force. Think of the last time someone disrespected you. Not overtly, but subtly. They interrupted you one too many times. Took credit for your work. Made a joke that wasn't quite a joke. You laughed it off. Told yourself it wasn't worth the confrontation. And that moment, it taught them how to treat you. Machiavelli would call that a teachable moment. Not for them, for you. In silence, you either solidify your power or give it away. But here's the part that few dare to embody. Machiavelli didn't just talk about power. He talked about self-control. Because if you want influence, The first person you have to govern is you. Emotional impulsivity is a liability. Rage makes you predictable. Desperation makes you exploitable. Oversharing makes you vulnerable in the wrong hands. He would advise you, speak less. Move precisely. Never beg for loyalty. Observe it. You don't need a scream to be heard. A whisper delivered at the right moment can silence a room. Let others overplay their hand. Let them underestimate you. Let them misread your silence as weakness. Because when your moves are calculated, not reactive, you stop being a pawn. You start becoming the strategist. But Machiavelli wasn't just speaking to rulers and politicians. He was speaking to anyone trying to live with integrity in a world that rewards illusion. His real advice was never lie more. It was, know who you're dealing with. That's the principle he repeats. He who does not recognize evil cannot guard against it. You keep getting surprised by people's selfishness, their flakiness, their manipulation. But Machiavelli would ask, why are you still surprised? He would tell you to study behavior, not promises. Study motivations, not words. Study where people invest their time, not where they direct their compliments. And when you stop being shocked by shadows, you can finally walk through the world with eyes wide open. But here's the twist that redeems Machiavelli from his misunderstood villainy. His realism wasn't heartless. It was liberating. Once you stop expecting the world to be fair, you stop feeling betrayed when it isn't. Once you stop needing constant validation, you stop bending yourself into shapes that don't fit. Once you see power dynamics clearly, you stop resenting them and start using them with honor. This isn't about control. It's about freedom. Freedom from the emotional chaos of trying to please everyone. Freedom from the illusion that your purity will protect you. Freedom from the guilt of wanting influence. You are allowed to be both kind and powerful, compassionate and calculating, forgiving and unshakable. Because the greatest lie ever told is that goodness and strength cannot coexist. Machiavelli didn't want you to become cold. He wanted you to become conscious. He believed the best rulers weren't the softest, nor the cruelest. They were the ones who understood people deeply and governed themselves first. And that's what you must become now. Not ruthless, but refined. Not reactionary, but relentless in your clarity. Not manipulative, but immune to manipulation. That is the real advice Machiavelli offers you. Not how to conquer others, but how to stop being conquered by your own illusions. Because when you see things as they are, not as you wish them to be, you stop bleeding for people who keep handing in eyes. And that is when power begins. You no longer move to be seen. You move to be effective. And this shift, quiet, invisible to most, is the beginning of your true influence. Because once you stop craving applause, you start playing a different game. Not the one where you perform your worth, but the one where you decide your value without needing confirmation. That's the Machiavellian transformation most never notice. Power, real power, doesn't shout. It doesn't need approval. It simply moves with purpose while everyone else plays to the crowd. But how do you bring this into your actual lives? Your job, your friendships, your daily interactions? You start with one brutal truth. Everyone is playing a role. Even you. Your boss pretends to be confident. Your friend hides resentment behind sarcasm. You smile when you want to stream. It's not inauthenticity. It's self-preservation. And Machiavelli would never judge that. He'd expect it. But what he would tell you is this. You'd better know your own mask before someone else uses it against you. So, who are you when you're not performing? Are you still valuable without overgiving? Still worthy when you stop fixing others? Still powerful when you say nothing at all? Machiavelli believed a prince should be feared if he cannot be loved. But for you, the modern prince, the ruler of your own life, that means be respected if you can't be liked. And most importantly, respect yourself enough to walk away when respect isn't mutual. Let's say you're in a job where you're constantly overlooked. You do more than your role requires. You volunteer. You stay late. Yet the promotion goes to someone louder, someone flashier. You're furious, but Machiavelli wouldn't be. He'd asked, did you make yourself indispensable or invisible? Because in a world built on perception, competence is not enough. You must also be strategically visible. You must learn when to speak, and more importantly, when to let others speak and quietly control the room from beneath the surface. It's the same in relationships. You think being kind, accommodating, endlessly understanding will earn you love. But you've learned the hard way. Overextension leads to erosion. You bend until you vanish. You give until you're empty. And then you wonder why they don't cherish you. Machiavelli would tell you, people value what they fear losing. That doesn't mean play games. It means don't make yourself too available to those who haven't earned you. He'd remind you, scarcity creates value, not in manipulation, but in self-respect. He'd advise you to cultivate mystery, not as a mask to deceive, but as a boundary to protect your soul. Because when people think they have full access to you, they stop listening. They stop watching. They assume. They expect. And that's when they begin to forget your value. You must become like a book that can't be skimmed. They either read you with depth or not at all. And what about influence? The modern world floods you with networking tips, persuasion hacks, endless talk of charisma. But Machiavelli's approach was deeper. He understood human nature, not trends. He'd tell you, understand what people want most and never compete with it. Align with it. Everyone wants to feel significant. So instead of trying to outshine, shine a light on others' greatness. Then use their loyalty to build your shared success. This isn't manipulation, it's diplomacy. The greatest leaders don't dominate. They orchestrate. The sharpest minds don't argue. They redirect. The most powerful people don't force. They influence gently, persistently, invisibly. And here's the secret Machiavelli hid in plain sight. Power is not what you take. It's what people allow you to keep. Lose their trust, and your throne dissolves overnight. So build slow, build wisely, build with eyes wide open. Now, ask yourself this. Where in your life have you handed over your power simply because you didn't want to seem difficult? Where did you say yes just to be agreeable, even when your whole body screamed no? Where did you hide your standards because someone called them too much? Those are the places Machiavelli would urge you to reclaim. Not with anger, not with drama, but with precision. You set a boundary. You hold it with calm. You walk away not to punish, but to preserve your dignity. This is what makes you emotionally untouchable. Because once your worth is no longer negotiable, no one can weaponize your insecurity. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop chasing. You start choosing. You stop begging for belonging and start building a life so rooted in self-trust that those who can't respect you simply fade out of frame. You become sovereign, not over others, but over yourself. And Machiavelli? He wouldn't bow to you. He'd respect you because you've done what most rulers, most people never master. You've learned how to walk through a world of masks, manipulation, and noise with clarity, restraint, and quiet strategy. Not because you want to control others, but because you finally refuse to be controlled by anyone, including the old version of yourself who was too scared to take up space. So here's your new creed, not as a performance, but as a principle. You speak with intention. You give with discernment. You low with eyes open. You retreat without guilt. And you lead, not with force, but with steadiness. This is the new Machiavellian mindset. Not cruelty, not dissection, but conscious sovereignty. You no longer exist to be palatable. You exist to be powerful and principled. Because the truth is, in a world constantly asking you to shrink to be accepted, Machiavelli dares you to expand strategically, wisely, and without apology. And that is the most dangerous power of all.